Supergirl is an utter calamity for the DCU. A collapse so bad it makes Morbius sound like a good movie to watch. Even that did better at the box office its opening weekend.
It's Morbin time.
And now Hollywood is in full panic mode, trying to make any excuse they can for why this movie is having an abysmal theatrical performance. So of course they're going to use the excuse, which is blaming misogyny, toxic masculinity, and superhero fatigue as the main factors for Supergirl's failure, which in their words all boils down to toxic fandom as an excuse. Not the fact that reportedly 60% of the audience was male and majority of women had little to no interest in seeing the movie, or the fact that the film isn't appealing abroad either. And totally not the possibility it's just a bad movie with bad writing, terrible cinematography, and an uninteresting story. But no, it's the so-called toxic fans, aka men, to blame for it bombing, which makes this a huge red flag for the future of the DCU.
It's like a little red flag that makes us sit up and take notice, and this claim has a bunch of little red flags on it.
It shows that the choice of moving in the direction of Supergirl for your second major film was a major mistake. And you couldn't even attract your target demographic, which was girls and women, with a female-led film. And then they'll say superhero fatigue, when meanwhile you have Spider-Man making more in pre-sales than Supergirl did her opening weekend. Which brings me to one of the main problems in Hollywood, which is the delusional argument some try to use, which is men are rejecting female-led superhero movies because of a resurging misogyny.
Right.
That is not the problem. The reason why female-led superhero films struggle or are rejected is because the movies are simply bad.
Whoa! Everybody just relax.
And the real reason female-led superhero movies don't perform at the box office is because they introduce characters in the most random, disrespectful, and off-putting way. For example, at the end of Superman, you introduce Supergirl, drunk, stumbling into the Fortress of Solitude through the wall, yelling "what the hell" and acting belligerent right off the bat. Then, as she leaves, she says, "Thanks for watching my dog, bitch." So from the beginning, you have established to the audience she's a drunk and extremely disrespectful person. Male or female, it doesn't matter. You don't show up to somebody's house, cave, or wherever, stomping around, being obnoxious, and then call them a bitch.
That doesn't make sense.
When they are watching your dog or just in general. And Superman spends that whole movie trying to get Krypto back because she's off being drunk somewhere. When if it's her dog, she should be there helping take responsibility for it. But she's too busy being quote-unquote traumatized, which is funny because she wasn't even born when Krypton was destroyed. So all she ever knew was that little piece of Argo City she lived on, so that was normal for her. So from the start, you've introduced your character as an asshole. So now, how is that supposed to attract an audience? That in itself is a toxic character. And then, when an audience doesn't have any interest, so no one sees her movie because of said toxic character, you blame the majority of your audience, which is men, for being toxic, which comes off as disingenuous. And then on top of that, you'll use the excuse of superhero fatigue, which at this point, Hollywood caused its own superhero fatigue, because it's been several years now of poorly written female characters sidelining the stronger, more known male characters, like Hawkeye for Kate Bishop, or Jane Foster for Mighty Thor, and Jennifer Walters for She-Hulk. And the one thing all these female characters have in common is how poorly written they are.
Crap, mega crap.
They all suffer from so-called flaws, but then can do everything better than their male counterpart.
So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you.
Really?
And then come off as hating men, disingenuous, and arrogant. And that's not the actor or the character to blame. That is how the writers are writing them to be, which is why it's met with criticism. It's not earned, it's not developed. They come in full girl boss. They need little growth, they're emotionally closed off, and are condescending towards their male counterparts, which is exactly what Supergirl is as well. A perfect example of how to properly introduce a female character would be in Batman vs. Superman. In the flawed film that it is, one of the things it gets right is when it introduces Wonder Woman. When she's introduced, number one, she is strategically put in a bright red dress so she sticks out in a crowd compared to everyone else, announcing her presence, which enhances her overall visual dominance in the room. And then, when she has her first interaction with one of our protagonists, Bruce Wayne, she is a confident, intelligent woman who is on the same level of respect as Bruce. He can tell she has a strong intellect and knows what she's doing. She can command a room and also infiltrate her way around to get what she wants. That is how you introduce a lead female character. You have established respect between them them and your main characters. But when you introduce a character that shows zero respect to the protagonist in his own movie, and you don't see her again until her own movie, where she's still the same alcoholic, self-centered character that was introduced initially, that creates zero hype because you never became interested in wanting to explore the character deeper, or have any reason to see more. And a perfect example of setting up a film that makes you want to see more would be like at the end of Avengers Infinity War, when they initially teased Captain Marvel, which was a strategic move to get people to go see Captain Marvel, assuming it would tie into the next Avengers film, which it doesn't do, and instead it introduces the main protagonist with no flaws. She's cocky, lacks charisma, is emotionally detached, with few vulnerabilities, which makes the audience not like her. And on top of that, you're hoping to see something that ties into Avengers. And it doesn't. It's an origin story, so now you leave disappointed and unfulfilled. And if that film doesn't come out in between Infinity War and Endgame, I guarantee it doesn't make as much money as it did, which gave them this false pretense that they did a good job. And a common rebuttal will be, well, it's another superhero film with a female lead that failed. So that goes to show that people, quote unquote males, hate female superhero movies. But that's just objectively false. The first Wonder Woman movie was very well received by critics and the audience, especially men. A complete female-led superhero movie that was extremely successful. Why? Well, because you established your character with dignity and respect, which in turn makes the audience respect said female character, and continues her attributes of strength, leadership, and respect earned by her peers, while also having compassion and empathy for others. And the even bigger reason was you told a solid story and had a proper character arc that caused growth, while also being flawed but strong. Unlike Supergirl, who they attempt to make flawed, but don't have her learn from anything until her dog is taken. And then she says something and immediately contradicts what she says by killing the antagonist. So that just goes to show when you write a good story, make the character truly flawed and learn from their flaws, they redeem themselves and show true compassion and concern for others, which Supergirl completely fails to do. But of course, those aren't the reasons that the studio will ever admit to being their fault. They'll just use men as the scapegoat or the toxic fan trope instead because it's easier, and avoid taking responsibility for their poor decisions and the fact that the character is genuinely unlikable, or that the story is very poorly written. And when the studio allows the actress to get asked baited questions, making herself become disliked by the audience because of her comments, because they make her seem entitled and they stir controversy, they also say it wasn't their fault and it was bound to happen because of those toxic fans.
You serious?
Hollywood will never learn from their mistakes or own up to them.
Fuck it, make it more lame.
But what do you think is the real reason female-led superhero movies fail? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.